training. So those of you who haven't gone to PETS yet, we encourage you to step up and get involved. But Steve has been, I think, to 10, maybe? Is it 9? 11. 11 going on 12. So I don't know if anybody else in this room has been to that many president-elect trainings, but Steve is just really, he's a big add to that. He's a speaker at PETS, just have a real passion for it. And during Steve's year as district governor, the thing that was near and dear to his heart is human trafficking. And that's what he's here to speak to us today all about. So without any further ado, if we could give him that Coronado warm Rotary welcome, my good friend Steve Weitzen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, past District Governor Dan Gensler. That introduction was necessary by all accounts. So before I get into why I'm here, I do want to give a couple of awards to your club, and President Lewin, if you could come and accept these awards for the work on polio during the 2021 year, and at any rate for the 2021 year. So congratulations to the club, and thank you all very much.
And I have to say, he does give the best lectures at PETS.
Oh, that was all the more reason for everybody to go. You know, it's such a treat, a thrill for me to be here. Dan, Chuck, and I have worked together very closely for the last 3 years during our governorships. So it was never mine or Dan or Chuck's governorship, it was all of our governorship. And the relationships, the friendships that came from that are priceless and, you know, last a lifetime. And that's one of the beauties about being in Rotary, not just at the governor level, but at all of our club levels. And that's the most valuable component of being in a Rotary club. And you guys mean the world to me. So thanks for being here and supporting me. Thank you. Yes. So I have deep connections and great fondness for this club. This is my third venue at the club. I'm lucky I found it. I didn't go to the hotel or the other place. But it's amazing. And the people I'm going to mention are people that I have worked with and gotten to know during the course of my journey in Rotary. You know, if a district, which is ours is made up of 60 clubs, if a district has one, you know, Rotary International director, that's extraordinary. It really is. Your club has had 2 RI directors in the history of your club. And unfortunately, Ron Bobian passed away. I know you had a ceremony here, a memorial service for Ron. But Ron was so kind and considerate of me when I was selected to be a governor. And I'm forever grateful for Ron and his guidance and his mentorship. John Matthews went to my first training as a nominee, Nat's governor nominee, advanced training up in Reno, and walked in and didn't know anybody. And John and Mary Ellen Matthews greeted Ava and myself with open arms, and you're so terrific to us. You made me feel so comfortable and so welcome. And he's really a terrific guy. I remember one of the PETS that I went to, the featured speaker, couldn't make it. He bailed out at the last minute in the afternoon, and John got up and spoke for a half hour passionately about Rotary, and it just wowed the crowd. So, and without notes and everything, that's who John is. And of course, Dan Gensler is who followed me, and Dan has done more for our district. People will never know how he revamped the district, because we used to have an office. We don't have an office now, and all of the organizational skills that he brought has made our district and the support of the club so much better, and people don't know it. But you were an amazing governor doing this and leading us the way it should be done. And last weekend was, as you know, was Rotarians at Work Day. And the whole district goes out, and not just our district, but around the world, everybody works. And so you're like, where does that come from? So our past district governor and the president of your club, Bob Watson, who's obviously not with us anymore, it shows you the power of one person. Well, one person can impact the world. And Rotarians at Work Day, it really is owed to Bob Watson. And Suzanne Manuel, who is assistant governor, are the best of the best. She was the best assistant governor one could ever have. And when you're in this position, you need Suzanne Manuel's. So she was terrific. Robin McCarty was the president during our year that went zooming by. And, Robin had the right personality for the job. I mean, he was terrific. The funniest guy I've ever seen, live or in person. So he was terrific, a great leader at that time. So you're right in stride is really the signature project that you guys do, and it's fantastic how you change lives and improve lives. And then last June we went to Houston, and I was on the plane with like 10, 11 Coronado Rotarians who you guys took me in, showed me around Houston. And I know, Houston is terrible, but the people that I went with were terrific. And,
clarify that.
Yeah. I would never go back to Houston. I don't think they have a convention. But that's that. So anyway, so thank you to the clubs, to your club, and all you do, and just taking me and embracing me, and I'm very grateful for that. So now I want to share with you my passion in regards to human trafficking. And when I speak about human trafficking, I'm going to refer to her, or to she, or to the girls. But the truth of the matter is that 1/3 of all kids who are trafficked are boys, young men. And but we only think about the women. Not this March, but the March before, we had a collective of organizations, nonprofits, in the district attorney's office who met at the Liberty Station for a day of seminars. And the feature speaker was a young man named Nathan Earl. And Nathan's from Miami, and he was trafficked by his parents. And we had dinner, Nathan and I had dinner together the night before and shared his story. And his parents trafficked him for drug money. And he was, 13, 14 years old. And he became homeless, and for the grace of God, he was able to live through all that. And then he was able to get educated, and now he's at Yale University working on a master's program, creating a model, a program for boys who are trafficked. Extraordinary story. So I wanted to, keep in mind as we go through this that it's not only girls who are trafficked, but it's young boys and men. So I'm often asked how I got interested in human trafficking, why I want to pursue this, and I don't know what it was or where I was, but maybe it was something I saw on YouTube, maybe it was an article I had read somewhere. And whatever it was, it just grabbed my attention, and I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it leave my mind. And that led to more reading and more wanting to know about it and what I could do to help those who are trafficked. But the question of how I got involved or interested is not really as important as to why I do this. And my why is simply, no human being should ever go through what these kids go through, what these girls go through. Suicide attempts, drug overdoses, having children with exploiters, not being married, teenage pregnancy, and all that goes with it. And there's not enough therapy in the world that will make it right for these kids. And so this was, and I told my wife, if I ever have an opportunity to become governor, this is going to be the one thing that I'm going to pursue and just not let go. And we're going to see it through, not only during the governor year, but after. So we went to the Toronto convention, and they had a breakout session. I was with Ivan. Ivan bought me a beer before we got off the plane. I buy you. Okay. So we were at the convention, and we looked at the programs and what we should go to. And we went to the one on trafficking, and there was 700 people at this breakout session. It was the largest attended session at the convention. And they had a panel, 4 or 5 people there, and there was this woman in her 50s who for the first time was speaking about her experience, telling her story. And she was nondescript. I mean, she looked like could have been anybody's mother, sister, daughter, friend, and told over her story. She had like 3 children from 3 different exploiters. She tried to kill herself a couple of times by overdosing, and I got to meet her after and talk to her a little bit more about her story. And I mean, I was just shaken to the core. And so Ava and I went to lunch, and that's where I said that, you know, if I could get there, this is what we're going to do. So we come back from Toronto, and David Oates of Club 33, the big club, was president, and he had created a committee, the first time a committee had been created in a club on human trafficking. So he invited Ava and myself to come to a training session that he was putting on for his committee of about 25. I mean, if you didn't, I know you know, but if you didn't know, I mean, like, Club 33 is like 3 districts in itself. I mean, they're just huge. So they do a lot of things, and this was one of them. Anyway, we went to a training session that was put on by a nonprofit called Free to Thrive. Jamie Beck, she's where I want to be. She's not practicing law anymore. She's running this Free to Thrive. And what the attorneys at Free to Thrive do is that they will go into court and bring a motion for, it's called a vacatur. It's a fancy French word, means to vacate or set aside a felony. Now, not long ago, the girls were arrested and charged with felonies of prostitution. And we have a wonderful district attorney, Summer Stephan, who realized that they're as much a victim of this crime as one who would be a victim of a robbery. And so these attorneys bring a motion to vacate the felony conviction. And with a felony conviction, you can't get a job, you can't, you know, get in schooling or scholarship, and you can't rent an apartment. So there are a lot of things that hold these girls back to trying to get back into society. So they do that, and the other thing they do is that they'll go into family court, and oftentimes, as I mentioned, the exploiter will have a child, you know, with the girls, and that gives them control, the exploiter control over these girls. And so they set aside the marriage as a sham marriage, and the courts will award sole custody to the mothers, to the women, and have a stay away order for the exploiter to stay away from these women, so that they can live a life without the threat of being brought back into the game or into the light. So we were there, and I had an opportunity. They had some breakout sessions. I was in a small group and met this woman named Jamie Johnson, who herself was a victim of trafficking. And when I got to talk to her at a breakout session, she has 4 kids from 4 different exploiters, and she's trying to get her life back together and just get through day to day. And in many ways, to me, it reminded me of an addict who's, you know, an addict, if they can get through the day without taking a drink or taking drugs, it's a good day. And for them, if they can get through a day without being brought back into the game or into the life, then it's a good day. It's incredibly difficult for a woman to leave their exploiter. Takes about 7 times. It's just not, they don't leave, and that's it. So whether they come back or the exploiter tracks them down, it brings them back into the life. Now, mind you, that the average age of a kid who is brought into to be exploited is 16 years old. And that was a statistic I had read, and I had known. That a few months ago, I was with Mary Ellen Barrett, who's the district attorney in charge of the anti-human trafficking division of the district attorney's office. He said, "Steve, no, you're wrong. It's 15 years bordering on 14 years old, which means you have to have a lot of younger kids to get to the average." Now, the average life expectancy of one who is in the game or in the life is 7 years. So if you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you're being trafficked, the best you can hope for is to live to 21, 22 years old. And it's really a bleak existence. And so that's why this is so significant. So there are, getting a little bit ahead of myself, but there are 3 forms of human trafficking. There's organ trafficking, there's slave labor trafficking, and of course, human trafficking. Now, organ trafficking includes corneas and lungs, and corneas, lungs, and livers. But the most common organ trafficked is kidneys. And there are about 10,000 kidneys that are trafficked annually, illegally trafficked. So people, they'll sell their organs to support themselves and their family at the expense of their own health. And so you have a high demand and a very limited supply. Human trafficking for slave labor, unfortunately, is very common today. Now, 100 years ago, governments around the world condemned slave labor to the history books. So we would think there's no more slave labor. But unfortunately, nothing could be further from the truth. It is estimated today that slave labor is very much present to more than 40 million men, women, and children. It's the population of California. These people are trafficked all over the world to work in restaurants, hotels, homes, factories, crop fields of coffee, cocaine, and the like. And often slave labor becomes the gateway to human trafficking for sex. So we were in Houston in June, and I was working in the House of Friendship at a booth called Rotarians Action Group Against Slavery, Ragus. And so I'm there, and this woman comes up, and at that time there was nobody around. We were getting closer to a breakout sessions. And she looked, she says, "Oh, Rotary and trafficking." I said, "Yes." I said, "Who are you?" She says, "Well, I'm Lucy Bloom." I said, "Oh, Lucy, nice to meet you. Where are you from?" She says, "I'm from Kansas City." She says, "I'm interested in this trafficking." I said, "Really? Tell me." She says, "I was trafficked." I go, "Oh." This is a woman in her early, middle 40s. "I was trafficked." I go, "Oh." She says, "Yes, by my minister at age 10. So you can only imagine what her view of the world, what her view of God is, and her place in the world. What kind of God do I have that allows this to happen to me? And we talked some more, and I said, it's time for the breakout session. Why don't we go to the breakout session together? So we walked down together, and we met this woman from Miami named Kat Rosenblatt. And Kat's in about her early 50s. And so we were talking to her. It's a Kat story, is that, like Lucy, both had parents that were married, intact families, siblings. And Kat is from Miami, and she's in this apartment complex, and she was trafficked by a 19-year-old girl who lived in the complex. And then Kat got, at 13 years old, your brain's not formed at all. And then she's trafficked, and they set her up in an apartment. And so they have a new set of friends, and she has her cell phones, and under the control of her exploiter. And she was not really serving a purpose for her exploiter. And she was resistant to it. So they gave her a lot of drugs and left her for dead. Now, one of the things about left her for dead in a ditch is that, I don't know what, let's say $400 or $500 is what that one transaction takes place, $400 or $500. And what the exploiter does is takes that money, charges her for her apartment, charges her for food, and for her drugs. So she's left with maybe $30 or $40. And she has to, make more than one in an evening to justify her existence. And then, so an exploiter will generally have 5, 6 girls in his group, and they make about $150,000 tax-free cash per. So they're making almost $1 million a year, these exploiters. So it's a high financial incentive for them to manage and control their girls. Anyway, so Kat was telling us that, so her story is that she was resistant, and they said, well, she's no good because she's going to go to the police and she's going to rat us all out. And they give her lots of drugs and throw her in a ditch to die. And for the grace of God, she doesn't die. and she's able to escape and get back into society. And she started her own nonprofit to help girls like her and get the word out to be able to, in the safe house, to be able to preempt this and give the girls what they need so that they don't get into the game or into the life. So where can we find kids who are trafficked? Well, we can find them in the cities, we can find them in urban centers, the suburbs, in rural communities, in wealthy communities, and in low-income communities. The signs of a student being trafficked includes running away from home, absenteeism from school, sudden drop in grades, change of friends, the sudden change in behavior, use of drugs, and a cell phone or two. So they're in constant contact with their exploiter. Now, there are two movies that falsely portray human trafficking and prostitution. The first is Pretty Woman. And 30 some odd years ago, Pretty Woman hit the silver screen and they established Julia Roberts as a movie star. And you know what it does is kids who watch this think it's okay. You know, you can fall in love with your handsome, your wealthy exploiter. And nothing could be further from the truth, because prostitution is a form of human trafficking. It drives me crazy when I ever see the movie advertised on TV, and during the holidays, it was on like 2-3 times a week. And so kids who see this get the false impression of that it's very dangerous and clearly life altering. It was on last week again. Anyway, continue to show it. The other movie is Taken with Liam Neeson. In the movie Taken, Liam Neeson's daughter, college educated and out with a friend on a trip to Paris, and she is kidnapped by wealthy Johns. And of course, that's not how trafficking happens. There's no physical taking, because an exploiter doesn't want to have attention brought to himself. He knows there are signs of a kid who is vulnerable, one lacking in self-esteem and really no support group, although that wasn't the case for Kat and Lucy. In any event, they don't want to have attention drawn to themselves, so they use the internet and invite the kids to parties, or have people like Kat had, a 19-year-old girl, bring them to a party, and they offer, they flatter the girls, how good looking they are, and offer them financial security, all the things that make them vulnerable. They now take away that issue for them, and so now they're part of a group. So and so gangs are no different. In San Diego County, we have 110 identified gangs. Now, these gangs are shifting their focus away from guns and drugs to sexual trafficking, and because they know that sex trafficking, the crime and the punishment is far less than guns and drugs, and so there's very little downside to them. Plus, the payoff is even higher. So it's a very challenging time to be able to take on this issue. Now, the issue of trafficking cannot be solved by any one group. Law enforcement can't solve it. Social services can't solve it. But Rotary has a place at the table in helping solve this problem. We've been at polio for about 45 years. We're down to 2 countries, but we can take on human trafficking. I have learned over the years that Rotarians are a solution in search of a challenge, and this is a challenge. We have a couple of safe houses here, and you only can have 6 beds to a safe house. In fact, right here in Coronado, you have Generate Hope at the corner of what's 4th and 7th and 4th and E or C or something? 8th, 4th and 8th. It's fantastic. And they have one down in Chula Vista. So you only have 6 beds. And there are 30 women a month who are turned away from safe houses because there's not the capacity, and there's a great demand for it. And so we can do something to help out these girls. So here at Generate Hope, if you get involved, you can mentor one of the girls. We could provide suitcases or gently used clothing for the girls, because the girls come in with nothing. So that if you have clothes, and the girls come in all sizes and shapes, so it doesn't matter. They set up a little boutique so the girls can choose clothes. It makes them feel like they have a new life if they have something that makes them look good and feel good. They come in with maybe like a Vons or Ralph's shopping bag with their clothes, whatever belongings they have, which isn't much. But if we can get them I have some suitcases in my car. If we can bring them suitcases so when they leave the program, they can leave with dignity and feel as they're a part of society. And just going to the safe house and being seen by the girls lets them know that they have self-worth, that they have worth, that people care about them. And that's so important in the recovery process. So that's what we can do as Rotarians. We have an anti-human trafficking committee. We have 14 members throughout the district from different clubs. And if you're interested, I would love to have you join and learn more about us. We meet quarterly on Zoom, and then we do projects like going to the safe house. I can't thank you enough for your time and your attention and to be here with you. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so we have any question and answer? Questions from anybody? There's Suzanne right here.
Well, as far as taking clothes or items do we just take them there and drop them off? How do we do that?
You give them to Dan.
Okay.
And Dan will get a hold of me. No, Suzanne, just if somebody from the club says, I'll take that on, I will come in and take them to the safe houses. We have also Alabaster Jar Project up in Center City, so whatever you do, I'll make sure it happens, okay? Thanks, Suzanne. Yes.
Thank you. Do you have any insight on the open border and sex trafficking?
No, but I can tell you that statistically 80% of sex trafficking in San Diego is local. We don't have people from San Diego going into Mexico or Mexico coming into the United States. In San Diego, sex trafficking is an $800 million a year industry. $800 million a year, tax-free. To give you a perspective, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, the San Diego Padres were purchased for $800 million. Wow. Yeah.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
We're all familiar with our house here in Coronado.
Yes.
It's a pretty big building.
Yeah.
And I just wondered about the rule about only 6.
Yes.
I'm just curious, who makes a big rule like that? Why can't we have more in ours or in one in Chula Vista?
Yeah, the government, the Department of Health Services, it's all regulated by the government. So it's unfortunately, and obviously to buy a house for such a feature is very expensive, and to maintain the house with the services that is needed is about $250,000 a year. So it's not only purchasing a house, but it's also providing the support services.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, actually, I was under the impression that there are varying levels of housing for the people that are extracted. So that when they first come back in, that they're in one level of housing, and then they, after a certain number of safe years, they get moved into another level to work their way out. Is that correct or not?
That's right. So the one for Generate Hope, the one in Chula Vista is where they first enter. It's a year-long program, and then they graduate. And once they graduate, they come here into Coronado, and the Coronado is the transition to society. That's where they get the job training and the schooling to ease them back into society.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to have you here visiting, for sure.
Do I get one of those big checks?
We can make that work. Yeah.
I saw the president who went. Must be good.
There you go. Thank you, Steve.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so for next week, we're back here again at CYC. And it's kind of interesting. We have, the topic is climate and food security. And it's Jennifer Burnish. She's the Marshall Saunders Chair at UCSD. So it'll be a very timely talk. And anyway, thank you again, Steve. Thank you, District Governor Chuck, for coming. And everyone go out and have a wonderful Rotary Week.
Yeah.